My name is Corey Levy, and I'm one of the co-founders of We Inspect. We're a specialized environmental assessment firm that works with individuals with compromised immune systems. I've worked with a lot of different cases, many individuals who are chronically ill, and I want to share a story with you of a case that is so terrible and so shocking that we had to create this video to help our client named Dorothy. She was referred to us by her doctor, but what happened during the remediation and what this company did to her is so terrifying. We need to spread the word. Here's her story.
We've always been looking for our dream home, and we found it. And it was a home that had some acreage to it and had a river running through it. Just a beautiful place.
So when did things start to change for you?
I went to a doctor. Her name is Dr. Renee Woods, and did some blood work. She said, Dorothy, I think we need to check you for mold. My office and my home, they're very clean and they're well kept, and we tested for it. And it came back. She walked into the office and I was sitting already there, and I could tell by the look on her face that it wasn't good. And she sat down and she said, you're toxic with mold. And then I got with Dr. Woods, and her suggestion too was, you've got to get out of the home. The home is sick and is making you sick, and you're not going to get better until you get out of the home. I had my office checked. It came back as there was a slight issue in the men's bathroom. We asked the people that had done the testing to come to our home and test, and they did. They said that there was an issue in the attic, but they really weren't very informative. What we did was reach out to you guys, and you guys came out. You spent 11 hours in our home. You went over it inch by inch. You guys were so much different than the first people that came out to look at our home to find it. And so when the testing came back, sure enough, a lot of issues going on, and it wasn't just in the attic. By then, I don't know mold. You guys have educated me on mold. I didn't know that spores, nanospores fly around. We didn't have a heating system. We didn't have an air conditioning system. I couldn't figure out why you were picking it up in the air in all the rooms in our home. When we moved to that house, it had been inspected and passed inspection. We had no idea. And so we had been living in that environment for 10 years before I got sick. That was pretty devastating. We had some water damage under a couple of our sinks. Our roof had leaked. Joe came out and took some pictures of all of that. They suspected that that might be an issue there in the living room area where that leak was. We had a garage that had a sink in it as well. It was pretty devastating. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to start. I knew how badly sick I was. We were asked to do a complete pack out of our home so that it could be cleaned. And not only cleaned, walls had to be tore out, vanities had to be tore out, the attic had to be completely overhauled. You have to pack your house out completely and remove the carpet and anything that might have spores in it. Not only do we do a pack out, but because the house was so high in numbers that we needed to get rid of our belongings, because if you remediate the house and you get it clean and you bring these items back into the house, you've created the same mess that you had to start with. We decided that we'd do a complete pack out and throw 90% of our belongings away. We ended up purchasing an RV. The RV was a nice enough place, but it wasn't our home, and we had to move it to our son's driveway and live there because they needed to remediate the house.
After being recommended to a remediation company, actually one who we've worked with in the past, tell us about moving forward. What was the process like?
Go with a gentleman named Mark. We called him, and he brought a contractor with him, and the contractor was going to be the guy that was going to tear the house down and where all the mold might be. He assured us he could do it. He wanted a half up front and half when the job was completed. He didn't even have the protocols with him.
How much was the estimate for?
His bid was for $22,000. The contractors that he brought with him was for $20,000. If his numbers didn't come up right, that he would be back in to do the job, and he would pay for the post-testing. Everything seemed to be in order. He seemed to know exactly what he was doing. I was directed by my doctor not to be in the house. And so we left the house. We asked him to remediate our cars and to remediate the the RV as well. Got a call from him. It was very contentious. He was upset with me because he said that the crawl space wasn't ready and I was supposed to have had dirt moved out, and he wasn't going to be able to remediate, and he was going to have to put the job on hold for a couple days while I did an emergency dig.
And at this point, how long have you been out of the house for?
We had been out of the house for a week. I'm not thinking straight. I don't have organization skills very well, but Mark had assured me that he understood mold and he understood people who were sick with mold. There was no containment set up. Joe had been working in there for 2 days and there was no containment set up whatsoever. And he marched my husband in there, and Brule said, aren't there supposed to be containment set up? And he said, yeah, we'll get to those. At that time, he called me and told me about the crawl space. And he said, by the way, we found mold behind the wall in the living room. I just want you to know that that'll be an added expense.
It sounds like he became very combative and wasn't following the protocol.
The house wasn't clean. It wasn't like HEPA vacuumed. It would be washed down. The walls would be washed. The floors would be washed. The mop boards would be cleaned. The light fixtures would be cleaned. Everything would be vacuumed. The house hadn't been cleaned, and Mark said that remediation doesn't mean clean. Remediation just means the mold's gone. When we got our post-test back, Joe had swabbed areas in our home that were filled with dust. The pictures were atrocious. The house was just as bad, if not worse, than the pre-test scores. Mark assured us that the job was done and he was successful. He said that he's never had a job not come back negative.
So what did he tell you about your house? Didn't he say something about wanting to buy your house from you? He thought it was so clean?
Yes, he had shared after he got it clean that he fell in love with our home. He fell in love with the place, and that he would like to purchase it from us if we were serious about selling it. And so I felt really positive when he said that. I thought, wow. When our test results came back, he was blaming everybody and everything but him. The attic was like our biggest problem. And he didn't even remove the insulation out of the attic. He left it there, all of it, with all the mold.
So we've done the post-inspection and we're waiting for the lab results to come in. What did he tell you? What happened next?
Well, he just said that the job was completed, so he wanted payment in full. And he was in the RV, and he was going to fog the RV. I paid him. I shouldn't have, but I paid him. And when he left, he took all the paperwork with him. So that paperwork was important because it had shared what he did in the house. And when the post-test came back, when nothing really was done in the house, there was nothing to compare it to.
What does that mean from a legal perspective for you?
We haven't been able to prove, and I asked him, I said, our insurance might be able to help us with this if I can show them that the work has been completed on the house. He wouldn't send it. What had actually happened was after the post-testing had came back, and it was not pretty at all. And then the next thing I know, Mark had called me, and Mark had told me that he was going out of business, that he wouldn't be coming to our house. So I asked him if he would refund our money, and he said no, he didn't have the money. And it's hard enough for you to come up with the money to do this and throw away everything and go through a medical protocol that's costing you thousands of dollars, and then have someone treat you like this when you're feeling so sick. Yes, he won't return my calls. He won't return my emails. We're with a lawyer right now, trying to see what we can do. Okay. And where we're at right now is trying to figure out where we go from here. He's got our money. He's not going to return it. Our house is a mess. We still can't live in it.
So this is going to be a hard question to ask. And again, this goal isn't just to help you, but to help others going through the process. If there's something you would want them to learn, what would it be?
When you're as sick as you get from mold, people think that you just get some respiratory issues, some allergies, some asthma, but it goes much deeper. It affects you mentally and emotionally and physically and spiritually. You need an advocate who can pace the journey for you, who can make sure that you're doing things correctly. You need to get with people who are educated about mold, and don't pay money until you know The job has been completed. Wait for your post-testing to come back. You have to educate yourself. You really have to look at who has the frame of mind to say, we get this, we know mold, we can help you. I'm scared of our house. It has made me that ill. As much as I love it, I don't know that I can go back in it.
As you can see, this is an absolute tragedy for Dorothy and her family. I want to discuss a couple of really important points throughout the process that really shows how big of a problem Mark and his company created for them. He subcontracted out the work that he said he was going to do. So all the major demolition and removal was to be done by another company that was not even certified in remediation. The issue with hiring a contractor is more than just understanding the work and how to follow the protocols. It's making sure that they're protecting the individuals that they're doing the work for and themselves. During the process, Dorothy shared with us that her husband was brought into the house to be shown areas where mold was found. There was no containment set up. There was no protective gear given to Dorothy's husband. There was no protective gear being worn by any of the workers inside the home. And when approached and asked why this was, it was shrugged off. And this is when Mark's demeanor began to change. He starts to yell at her on the phone anytime she asks how the process is going. And then he starts to take advantage of the process that's going on by telling her that he would buy her house from her because he believed that the process was going so well. I want to fast forward to when Mark is saying remediation is completed. He meets Dorothy at her RV where she's been living throughout this process, and he tells her that he's going to do her a favor by fogging the RV to remove any airborne contaminants that may have been brought over from moving contents from her old home. When he shows up at the trailer, he tells her that he needs the final payment for the rest of the contract of the $42,000 for remediation, and he needs her to sign saying that everything's completed. This is where Mark really begins to prey on this poor woman who's sick by not following industry standard and taking advantage of her by saying he needs his payment up front prior to any test results coming back. Once Dorothy signs the documents and leaves the check on the counter in the RV, she leaves as Mark tells her that it's not safe to be inside during the fogging process. He actually steals the documentation and the check from the countertop that is countersigned, proving that the work has been done. So we show up on the day to perform the post-remediation inspection and testing. And as we're going through doing our initial evaluation, we notice that the majority of the recommendations that we put in to the initial report were not followed. Attic insulation wasn't removed. There was debris, dust left behind, visible mold growth on exposed framing. And when we confronted Mark about what we saw, he blamed Dorothy, saying that the homeowner told him not to follow the steps in the report. Now we know that's completely untrue. So we analyzed the results, we put together a report, new protocol for what was left from the initial remediation that needed to get done to really fix the place. When Dorothy sends that over to Mark so that he knows what the next steps need to be for removal, it takes days to hear back from him. Finally, he responds, calling Dorothy, letting her know that he's shutting his business down, that he has no more money left, and he can't do the work, nor can he give her a refund for any of the work that was done. It gets even worse here because in order for Dorothy to get any reimbursement for the little work that was done by Mark, she needed a copy of the check provided to Mark and the countersigned contract that was stolen from her RV by him. Dorothy can't get any money back. Mark has completely stopped answering her calls, her texts, her emails. We've tried reaching out to him. This is why we need your help. Any amount of donation will go so far for Dorothy and her family. Even if you can't share money, please share this video. Help raise awareness for what Dorothy has gone through. Maybe a friend of a friend can connect with this story and would be willing to help. We need to raise awareness for Dorothy, but we also need to raise awareness in the community so that people know what the red flags are when going through this process and know how to protect themselves. Thank you for listening.